Today on Context, sex-selective abortions and why some cultures value boys over girls. I'm Lorna Duick, and you're watching Context, the show that looks at life beyond the headlines. What does easy access to abortion in Canada and the ability to know a baby's gender before birth mean? Sex-selective abortions. In countries like India and China, where sons are preferred, females are more likely to be aborted. Now there's a growing concern this practice is happening in Canada. A recent medical editorial caused controversy when it proposed a 30-week ban in Canada on disclosing the baby's sex to parents. Why are males seen as more valuable, and will a ban on sex-selective abortion make any difference? Let's put it in context. Our first guest is Malavika Kasturi, who teaches in the Department of Historical Studies at the University of Toronto. Her areas of research include the regions where sex-selective abortions are performed. And Malavika, tell us about the pressure some women are having to produce sons, not daughters.
Yes, well, the pressure to produce sons is not specific to everyone in a particular culture, but to specific families and specific communities, especially those who are upwardly mobile, and in urban cities, in urban areas where they would prefer to have sons rather than daughters, for whom they would have to pay expensive dowries.
Even though they're upwardly mobile,
yes,
money's not a problem.
Yes, very often, you see, it's not just about money. It's about the groups with whom they wish to marry. And I worked on female infanticide in the 19th and early 20th centuries, and a lot has changed since then. But what is known now is that it is very important to look into the family status, the economic status, the social status of young girls, because these families, if they're upwardly mobile, very often wish to marry into families which demand very, very high dowries. And those families will be of a higher social status, will be of a higher ritual and economic status.
Tell us the countries where this is happening, the regions.
Well, this would largely be in some parts of South Asia. I don't think this applies to China. The reasons for feticide would be very different there. I don't feel qualified to comment, but I do believe it has also to do with the one-child policy. In South Asia, particularly India, the question of marriage strategies and which often pushes women and of the within families who are eager to have sons and it sort of forces them to abort female fetuses, very often has to do with questions of marriage, and very often amongst families who don't want to have too much girls.
Well, this has been banned actually in India,
yes,
and they passed a law
yes.
against the
yes.
aborting of female babies. But now the worry is it has come to Canada. What do we know about Canada becoming a haven for sex-selective abortions?
I don't think it's a haven, quite frankly. I think what has happened is that, you see, we have the same problem in India where we have a lot of, even though using amniocentesis and for the purpose of finding out the sex of the child, not for health reasons, but for the sake of determining whether or not to keep the fetus, is banned. What happens is that this unfortunately takes place anyway, because laws don't always address the issue.
We have no law on abortion.
Well,
we have no
yes,
restrictions
yes.
at all. So if you
we
want
have laws
to do
and
it for
restrictions,
sex...
yes. But I think very often the groups who sort of come here don't come here because they know Canada has no laws. Very often the groups who prompt for feticide here would not do so in India, because very often coming here, immigrants who become members of new diasporas, they in fact, what happens is that there is a shift in their social status, but and their economic status, but the pressures in terms of what is expected, in terms of the kinds of marriages they will make, remain the same. So very often, I think it may have to speak more it may speak more with, it may actually have more to do with the experience they have as immigrants in Canada, as opposed to their coming here because this is a haven and has no laws.
So a discussion has begun that the Canadian Medical Association Journal proposed we put a 30-week ban on revealing the sex of a baby in the womb. Do you think that will curb the demand to end female babies in the womb?
Theoretically, yes, but I see huge problems in how this act would be how it would actually work. Because I don't think you could actually target, people coming from certain immigrant communities, assuming that all of them
But if we
necessarily
did it all
practice
across all pregnancies, we didn't target an ethnic group. We just said we're not going to reveal the sex before 30 weeks. It makes the whole process of getting an abortion for a gender selection, it slows it down, much more difficult.
I believe, yes, it would act as a curb, but unfortunately there's also the question of the right to information. If such an act is actually passed, it should be carried out across the board, but not target specific sections of the population, not just those coming from India or China, for example.
Okay, we want to go to our studio audience now because we do have a woman here who has been involved in crisis pregnancy counseling and Marine Dinner. I'm just wondering if we can find you. How is this issue coming up of sex selection in the work you do with people who are pregnant?
I can't say that we counsel or support women who have had abortions necessarily because of sex selection, but we do see many, many women who suffer sort of the effects of an abortion. And I'm interested in how, if you know of how they react to abortion after the fact, after they've perhaps been forced to have a sex-selected abortion. And that.
Okay, Malavika, do you know about that? How does it impact a woman to know she had no choice but to abort a female fetus?
Well, certainly it's very disempowering. And what happens in situations like this is most of the decisions are made not by the women, but by the men in the family. And women, but it's only women who actually very often, and women have very few rights over their bodies. And what happens is before, if a woman resists, I think a lot of pressure is put on her, a lot of blackmail, emotional blackmail. So it's emotionally draining, it's disempowering, and it's a form of abuse. And what I do know is that very often it's if what one has to address is the system behind. I think women choose to abort irrespective of the sex of the child, are exercising the power over their body. That's a very, very different. That's a very, very different issue from this, where I think the gaze has to be turned away from the women and actually on, on the men in the family.
And why they are not valuing.
Yes,
women.
and the other thing, of course, is to have precisely the kind of counselling and infrastructure and support. Because I don't think, acts in themselves are enough, pieces of legislation. What we do need is we need something to look, a long-term solution, which would be to actually empower these women.
All right, Malavika, thank you very much. We do want to know what you do think. Do expectant parents have the right to know the sex of their unborn baby? Send us your answers by phone, email, Facebook, or Twitter. Leave us a video message on our website. I'd love to know what you think. Be part of the conversation. Our studio audience is taking a live vote, and I'll have those results when we come back. Coming up, we'll speak with Carrie Bowman, a bioethicist who will help us understand what's at stake as technology allows us to choose a baby's sex. Thank you, Malavika.